Hello and welcome, fellow obsessive gamers. Peter here, and you've come to the Esoteric Order of Gamers, where I'm doing another review. And today I'm going to do a review of a game called Starfinder, Pirates of Skydock. And this is by Gale Force Nine. Gale Force Nine very kindly sent me a copy of this game to check out and review for you. Now, this is based in the science fiction universe of Pathfinder. I knew I'd say that. Not Pathfinder, Starfinder. Pathfinder is the fantasy equivalent of the game. Starfinder is the science fiction version of the game. And they're both role-playing games by a company called Paizo, which is based on the D20 system of Dungeons & Dragons. And by amazing coincidence, I've just started a Starfinder role-playing game campaign with some friends of mine. We've been playing Dungeon Crawl Classics Lakmar for about 2.5 years, and we felt like a bit of a change. So I'm no longer doing the GMing duties. Somebody else has taken over, and he's taking us into Starfinder. So it was perfect timing for me to get the board game here by Gale Force 9 and check it out, because actually I knew something about the universe and the background and the races and characters that inhabit this particular universe. So here we are. This is a setup for a two-player game. You can see we've got two characters here. Now, the basic idea of this game is that you are characters in this sci-fi universe, and you're at Skydock, which is a space station, and you're wanting to steal this big spaceship here. So you're trying to go onto the spaceship and take over areas and win glory, and basically take over the ship before the guards either kick you out or there is a lockdown on the ship and you're caught. That kind of thing. So to win the game, you need the highest number of glory, which are these green counters here. And you can also add to that points of support, which you can get for various things there. However, if the alert level reaches the end of the track and gets to lockdown, that means everybody loses, you're all captured, and that's the end of the fun. So let me give you a brief overview of the rules. I won't go into huge amounts of detail, but it'll give you an idea of how this game plays. As I said, you get a character each. This is your character, it's got a special ability, and on the back there's a little setup diagram which shows you which abilities you get and which glory you start with. You match the ability tokens given here, so you can see I've put 2 here. I need 2 more move tokens of level 1 on my track. There we go. You put that face up. You get 4 energy cubes each. You get some character tokens as well. As I said, you might get some starting glory. Now, these things here are ability tokens, and as you go through the game, you'll be placing energy on the ability tokens to activate them and then complete that particular ability. So you have several types, and you can see I've got them here. Now, I should point out, of course, that I've got a foam core insert. I made one yesterday for this, so you don't get this foam core insert with the game, obviously. So the ability tokens are, there's one for movement, there's one for drawing scheme cards, there's one for interacting, there's one for looting, one for attacking, and one for healing. And they're all the different things you can do during the game. You also, before you start the game, get to choose 2 more abilities which you can place on your track, upgrading your character. They have to be level 1 abilities, however. So let's just pop some more on there like that. Now, these abilities have to be placed in the leftmost position on a track, and it does actually matter where things are on a track when you play certain cards, but we'll get to that later. So players start off in the dock space. These are all the different spaces of the spaceship. The dock, the drift engine, and the bridge are always in the same places, but the others are randomly placed, so they can go on any of these spaces. Before you get started, you also have a secret backer, which is a secret objective condition, and you get 2 of these cards from the secret backer deck. You can choose one and discard the other, and you can see on each one of these cards there is a particular thing you have to achieve and the amount of support tokens that you get for it, or support points I should say. The other thing you have are 3 objectives which you take from this deck, and you draw 3 of these randomly and you lay them out for everybody to see. And if you achieve these objectives, you can see they're worth a certain number of glory points up here. So they're good to have as well. There are also encounter, loot, and scheme cards. There's a countdown to the launch of the spaceship, and when the spaceship launches, that's when you're going to finish the game and count up your glory and support tokens to see who wins. Of course, if the ship hasn't locked down in the interim. So basically during the game, what you do is you take turns taking an action. As I said, you start here at the dock, and then you get to draw a number of cards from the loot deck or the scheme deck in any combination. You usually draw 2 per turn, but for the first turn you draw 4. So let's say we draw 2 of each. Now you can do this simultaneously. All players can do this particular phase at the same time. So with these cards, you can immediately upgrade your ability tokens if you wish. They also have other special abilities you can use. But on the left-hand side here, you can see icons matching the ability tokens. So for this one, for example, there's an interface icon on it. So I could trade in this card or discard this card to get either a level 1 interface token, or I could upgrade an existing interface token on my board. Now the level of each token is represented by the number of bars here on the token. So you can see I've already got a level 1 interface token. If I traded in this card with the interface icon, I could upgrade that to a level 2. So you can either keep your loot cards or you can trade them in to get abilities. Scheme cards are very handy as well. They do various things. They have a special ability on them and you can play 1 scheme during your turn. They also can be traded in to give +2 on any challenge test, and you can trade in as many as you want to do that. The really handy thing they have, however, are these icons on the top. And these icons are used when you are trying to achieve these objectives. When you're trying to achieve an objective, you usually have to do an interact action. You have to follow the conditions on the card, and there may be a track which you have to do things over successive turns. But in the end, you will have to do an interact action and exchange scheme cards with the icons matching those on the objectives. So scheme cards are very multi-purpose. As I said, special ability, pluses to challenge checks, or trade in to get objectives. Very handy indeed. So now everybody places their energy cubes on the actions that they want to complete this turn. And this is quite fun because you can actually plan your moves in advance, looking at what abilities you have, where you want to go onto the board and what you want to do. So for example, if Navasi here was starting, let's say she's got the first player marker, she would discard a token from the move ability and she can move 1 space. So moving along these corridor lines, she might move here to, let's say, the hover lift. Then it would be Keskadai's turn to remove an ability token and do an action. Now, when you move to a new room, it may have an encounter symbol on it, in which case you draw an encounter card and you look on the card and you do a random encounter. However, you only do an encounter if the alert levels match on the card, and the alert levels are marked on this alert level track here. You can see this is 1, 2, 3, 4, and as you go up alert levels, the challenge number you need to complete tests gets higher. It also depends on the number of players you have. So if you have 2 players, it'll go to the end of that track and then go down to there like so. If you have 3, it goes a bit further. If you have 4, it goes all the way to the end of the track before going down to the next level. So if you have a random encounter, of course, you complete what it says on the card. Now you'll notice this card also has a guard encounter on it as well. You draw a card if you leave a room where there is a guard, and you have to complete the guard encounter depending on what alert level it is. In this case, you can see that all the alert levels are highlighted, so any alert level will mean this is what a guard does. It'll give you a challenge, blah, blah, blah. For almost all of the other abilities, it depends which room you're in. So if I want to do a loot action in this room, I've got to have a loot icon in the room. So for example, if Keskadai is in this room, he can discard an energy from his ability token and loot this room. And when you loot, you draw a loot card and then you do a test to see what happens. Now, when it comes to tests, they're very simple and they're very much like the role-playing game actually. They're just a D20 test. And basically you look at the alert level. So say the alert level was down on this second row here, the test level would be 8. This is modified by any guards in the room. So if a guard was in the room, it would have a -2. So that's to the roll, so he'd need a 10+. There may be other modifiers from the ability token. So if his ability token, the loot level here was on +2, that would give me a +2, so that would nullify the guard's -2. So it'd be back to 8+ again. So 8+, 14. That's fine, no problems at all. So I get to keep my loot card. If I failed that test, I still get to keep my loot card, but I have to spawn a guard in that room. I've obviously awakened a guard. Now remember that loot cards have special abilities. For example, these stun gauntlets allow me to remove a guard from my room, placing it in the supply, and gain a glory. So I get a glory for stunning a guard. But also I can use these at the start of the turn again to upgrade abilities. When you interact with a room, do an interact action. If it's got an interact symbol, you can do something, and that is usually the special ability of all the rooms. So they do various things. You can control the launch counter. This is going to go down every turn usually, but you can control where it goes up or down on the track. You can remove guards, you can draw scheme cards, you can heal yourself, depending on which room you're in. If you've got the attack action and you're in a room with a guard, you can attack that guard. Again, it's another challenge test depending on the alert level. You take into account the modifier from the guard token itself and the modifier on your ability token, and you make your test. If the attack succeeds, you get a choice. You can either stun the guard and gain a loot card, or you can kick him out an airlock. And if you kick him out an airlock, you get 2 glory. So we're not very nice people, are we? And in fact, as we were playing this game, we had vivid images of quite a number of guards floating around in space outside the ship. All people with families, wives and children. Anyway, you do get glory for killing them. However, if you fail, you get a neutralization token. These little tokens here, and this neutralizes one of your abilities. And you have to place it on one of these abilities according to a roll of the die. So for example, if I got an 18, I'd put it on an ability if I had an ability in the 18 slot. As I don't have one there, I can place it on any one I want. That gets neutralized. And of course, there's a heal ability that allows me to remove those neutralization tokens earlier. There's also an ability that allows you to draw scheme cards, which are very handy, of course. And that's about it. That's all the different things you can do during a turn. Now you've seen the ways to get glory. How do you get these support tokens? Well, these are face down tokens which have numbers on them from 1 to 4 at least. There might be a 5 in there as well, I forget, but they're different numbers. Now, when you're trying to get one of these objectives and you're doing the challenge test, you may find that you don't have all the icons on your scheme cards to trade in to get this objective. So you can ask for help. You see if anyone wants to help you, and if they do, they can trade in one of their scheme cards to give you the right icon so you can complete the objective. If that happens, neither of you get any glory, but you both get to draw a support token. And you don't know what the number is going to be on this token. Well, you can look at it once you've got it, but you don't know what your opponent has got. So you may have just asked someone for support and given them 3 points and you only got 1 point. However, it could have been the other way around. Now at the end of turn, there's an upkeep phase. You discard down to 5 cards. You move the launch token 1 space along, which counts down to the end of the game. Each active guard token that isn't in a room with a character moves around the board according to these red arrows. Now, as players, you're not restricted by these red arrows. They just show the path that guards take. If you end up in a room with a guard token at the end of this move, you have to increase the alert level by 1. Then, if you're still in a room with a guard, you have to do a challenge test for that guard. And if you fail, you'll get a neutralization token. Any stun guards get flipped to their active side, and if there are 3 or more guards in one room, 1 gets removed to the supply. Finally, any assigned neutralization tokens get flipped to their recovery side, and if they're already on their recovery side, they are removed. And that's a round of the game. As you can see, pretty straightforward, but lots and lots of interesting options. So what did I think of Pirates of Skydock? Well, I think it's a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun with this game. I think it's great. It reminded me a lot of another one of my really favourite games. This one here. Infiltration by Fantasy Flight Games. This is a game that comes out a lot when I'm having a gaming session and we've played a big game and there's probably about an hour left of time and we want to play another game. Infiltration comes out. It's a great push-your-luck science fiction game set in the Android Netrunner universe. And you're going into a building and collecting data, and you don't know what the data is worth until the end of the game. The support mechanism of this with these tokens reminded me of that, because that's sort of an unknown element. You don't know how many points other players have in support tokens, though you might be able to see how much glory they have. But Pirates of Skydock reminded me of Infiltration, not because of the mechanics, but because it's a really fun game you can play in a relatively short amount of time, and I can see it coming out a lot at the end of the night when you feel like one more game and you've got time to play another one. There's a lot to do in this game and a lot of choice, and it's all really fun. You get to plan your move in advance when you place down your energy cubes, you decide which actions you want to take that turn, and you can plan out, okay, I want to move to that room and I want to do that action, and then I want to kill that guard and then go to that room. So you can plan that out in advance. However, you have to keep in mind certain things. If you end up in a room with a guard at the end of your turn, you're going to advance the alert level. So things are going to get harder and harder to do as the alert level gets higher. You've got to keep an eye on the launch track here, so you've got enough time to get enough glory before the ship actually launches and the game is over. And you can control that to a certain extent by going to the drift engine room and increasing or decreasing the launch marker. So you can control kind of a bit when the game ends, which is great. You might think, okay, my opponent or my opponents have too much glory. I need a bit more time, so I'm going to have to delay the launch a bit. Of course, that's going to take up an action, and they'll be using those actions to get more glory, that kind of thing. It's fun. While you're doing that, you're also deciding, do you want to use the special abilities on your loot cards and scheme cards, or do you want to use the icons on the loot cards to increase your abilities, or do you want to use the positive modifiers on your scheme cards for challenges, or do you want to use them to save them for icons so you can complete objectives? So there's all this choice, which I really love. It's really fun. The other good thing about objectives is some of them have a little track on the bottom here, so you might have to give up advantages to advance on the track to get the objective. For example, instead of drawing a loot card, you could advance one space on a track. So you miss out on 3 opportunities to get those very useful loot cards, but you advance on this track, so at the end of this you can get 9 glory if you have the right icons to match it. So lots and lots of choices for what is on the surface a quite simple looking game. There's a lot of things to consider, and I really like that. It makes it really fun. Another thing I really love about this game is the way it ramps up, and this again reminds me of Infiltration because there's also an alarm timer in this game. The alarm timer in this game is the alert level, which is getting higher and higher as you go on. It's also bringing extra guards onto the board. I forgot to mention that. As it goes up a level, another guard appears. And of course, the challenge tests get higher as the alert level increases. So everything gets more intense. Of course, your abilities are getting better, so that mitigates those rolls a little bit. But you very quickly run out of time, and you really don't want to get to lockdown because if it gets there, everybody loses. Production-wise, this is definitely one of the best looking games I've seen from Gale Force 9 for a while, actually. The colours are bright, which is really nice to see. The artwork is bright. I think a lot of their games recently have been licensed ones using movie stills, which are quite difficult to reproduce nicely. They tend to be a bit dark and washed out. So this has a lovely, bright, vibrant feel, which matches the Starfinder universe. The quality of these tiles is nice and thick. Cards are fine, they're just normal quality, but I've sleeved them all, which brings me unfortunately to the insert. This plastic insert isn't very useful. It doesn't have enough room for sleeve cards. They don't fit in the well provided for them, and it just has these 3 wells. I threw that out straight away, as you can see, and I made my own foam core insert, so I highly recommend doing that. But I really like the bright sci-fi feel of everything. The artwork's fun as well. The ability tokens are really easy to read, which is great. It's a really lovely job, actually. I've only played with 2, so I don't know what it's like with 4, but there's obviously more space on the alert level track when you've got 4 players, so it gives you a little bit more time to do things. I think it would work absolutely fine. It's a game that has a small game feel, but when you start playing it and you've got all the choices, it feels like a bigger game than it is. And I really appreciate the fact that in this day and age when most of my games tend to be full of miniatures and have legacy systems and campaigns and go on for ages and ages, that we've just got this lovely, short, self-contained, fun, relatively easy to learn game. I think it's great. The only thing I would have liked to see is perhaps a bit more conflict. It would have been nice to try and kick a player out the airlock as well. But, you know, that's a different type of game. You can, of course, ask for that assistance, which is a nice little push your luck kind of thing. You know, is it worth getting this objective and losing the points to perhaps get a bonus of more support points? But then, of course, my opponent may be getting more, so that's a bit risky as well. So that's a nice trade-off. But actually, when I played it, I didn't feel that lack of player interaction because we were both enjoying it so much that we were both immersed in it. So I didn't feel like it was a kind of solitaire experience in any way at all. So that's Pirates of Skydock, Starfinder Pirates of Skydock by Gale Force 9. I really enjoy it. I'm going to keep it in my collection, and I can see it coming out definitely at the end of a game session when you've got an hour left and you want to get one more fun game in. I think it's a beauty. I think it's gone under the radar a little bit. So if you're interested, check this one out if you like what you see after this video. Thank you very much for watching indeed. Please subscribe if you haven't already. When you hit the subscribe button, hit the bell icon so you get notifications of upcoming videos. But please check. You may be watching my videos all the time and not even realize that you haven't subscribed yet, and it does help me out to have as many subscribers as possible. Of course, I'm on Twitter and Facebook and all the other channels, and I've got my own website, orderofgamers.com, where you'll find hundreds and hundreds of summaries, and I haven't even mentioned that I've done a rule summary and reference for this game. So if you go along to the website, you can download it for free. If you do enjoy it, however, consider leaving a small donation because it does take a lot of time and effort to do. I'll have a link to that below in the comments and the show notes. I'll see you in the next video. Good gaming, everybody. Bye for now.